Hello and welcome to the Aedifico podcast. We are so excited. Today we have our new team member, Rob Jones, with us. So Rob is going to we're just going to wrap a little bit. We're going to talk about the industry. We're going to talk about Aedifico, talk about our experience. And so I'm excited. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So even when I was looking at this question myself, how did we meet? I really don't. I know it was through our mutual friend Kevin, I think. But
Yeah. So it was when I first started as an owner's rep, and we were using the company I was with at the time. I think we were using you to help us source
that's right.
talent.
Yes.
And I think so. I met you very early on in those days. So yeah, it's been a lot of change and a lot of growth since then.
Yes,
For both
that's
of us.
exactly. So tell us about that. Tell us about your background.
So going way back in the Wayback Machine, unlike a lot of folks in the real estate industry, I don't have a background in architecture or engineering or a lot of the like I'm not a GC. But I came to Seattle. I moved to Seattle to go to Cornish College of the Arts to be an actor. So my background was as an actor, but as with most things, as an actor, you have to have a day job. And I was fortunate to work at Swedish Hospital at the time and started as a project manager doing outpatient clinics for Swedish, worked at Swedish in Providence for a combined 10 years. And then after that, got the opportunity to work as an owner's rep at Amazon and kind of get my, kind of cut my teeth on the grindstone, right? Really, when I started, we had three people really doing projects. 10 years later, we had, close to 100 across the US and Canada. It just the growth was just exponential, and just really rapid, a lot of change, constant iterations, hurry up and wait a lot, but mostly hurry up and wait and then hurry up again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my background in a nutshell. Miss being in a plane seat a little bit. Used to be in a plane seat a lot. Like flying. So
yeah, there's things to miss about it, and then there's things that you go, okay, maybe it's kind of nice to stay home. There's both.
Right. Yeah, double-edged sword. I don't say much.
Right. Although there are several individuals at the airport who find it amusing to
There is one guy in particular who's really good at it.
And so this guy is yelling, here's how long TSA rules have been in place. You're kind of an idiot if you're not doing that.
Yeah.
You don't have to take off your shoes. No, you do have to take off your shoes, He does make it a little less stressful, I think.
Yeah, he makes it fun.
That's right.
And reminds people at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. He's just a TikTok story waiting to happen. I'm sure that several people have put him on the TikTok.
Yeah, you'd think. Although it might be dicey, kind of, filming the TSA guy.
Yeah, but what's dicey these days,
That's a whole
you might be right, but yeah, totally. Cool. Well, yeah. So I have never really done a deep dive into my background on the podcast. So I thought I would also kind of fill people in on what I've done throughout my career. So I've always very much been an entrepreneur and someone who likes to pursue ideas and just very, very curious person. So my very first foray into commercial real estate was that I was invited to a crew event. Crew, for those who don't know, is Commercial Real Estate Women, and a great organization that is much more than just women, does amazing programming. I attended that event and I met Brett Ernest at that event, and he had just moved to Seattle to pursue very large projects on behalf of Clark Construction. And I told him I was a recruiter, and he believed me. And kind of the rest is history. But, so I got to recruit for a lot of great companies in the Seattle area. In Seattle, partnered pretty closely with CBRE Worked with lots of general contractors like Swinnerton and Clark, as mentioned, DPR, Graham. I worked with some smaller ones as well within the Seattle area and helped them fill positions all across the board. Anybody that they needed really in construction. So I always say, like, I was a construction recruiter, but also like what that covers is CRE and AEC. So commercial real estate and architecture, engineering, construction. So did that throughout the last 12, 13 years. But in addition to that, have also served on several different task forces. I live in the city of Tacoma, and so served for 5 years on the permitting task force. And you, right, like I'm not an architect, but I listened to what people were saying in the development community about permitting, and then I sort of delivered that information. And it was such an interesting experience because sometimes they got so far in the weeds as engineers and architects that I was like, hold up, guys, we gotta like come out of this and remember like why we're doing this in the first place and make sure that we're not rabbit trailing down this weird engineering hole, right?
Right.
So that was that was my role on the task force, and then it was also kind of let's be human here. And so I was always saying, like, we need to start with a little icebreaker because we're all on the same team here, right? You know, the city had their perspective, and then of course the development community had their perspective, but at the end of the day the goal was get to yes. And so we kind of just kept that in mind constantly. And then I also had a lot of personal complaints about parking downtown, so I ended up on parking task force as well for a couple years, like 2.5 years.
Be careful what you complain about, right?
What?
Be careful what you complain about, right?
Oh my gosh, exactly. But I was so curious about, you know, what their perspective was, and it totally made sense when I was in it, right? So, I mean, I would just recommend anyone serve on a local jurisdiction task force. It's so eye-opening, and it just helps you empathize with every side of the system, I guess, both the public and private. But what was so interesting about that experience is that it really did give me like big picture how the development community talent and the people who are subject matter experts and technical experts in the development industry, how much public work they do and how much policy is associated with what they do. And so, you know, later on we'll talk about Aedifico and, you know, what we hope for it. But, you know, I mean, there's just a huge opportunity to streamline things on the public side too. So, you know, and then I've done other gigs, business development, consulting, talent, team consulting, you know, DEI consulting. So kind of the gamut and all within, you know, the industry, the CRE industry. So that's my background.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know some of that, so that's great.
Yeah. I'm a nerd. Like I'm a true...
What did you want to be when you grew up? Like clearly I wanted to be an actor, right? That was my gig.
Yeah.
What did you like? What did you envision? Because I don't think anybody really gets into commercial real estate. Very few people gets into commercial real estate because they wanted to do that as a kid. It's a weird thing for a kid to even understand.
100%.
I'm always really curious how people come to it, because obviously engineers, architects, those kinds of people, I mean, you have a bent and you definitely follow that. But like for the rest of us, for me, I just love the built environment. I've always loved the built environment. As a kid would stop and look at construction projects. Even today, when I see a high rise going up, I stop and watch the iron workers. It's
totally.
It's fun for me.
It's an amazing career path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so varied, such a varied career path.
Totally. Yeah. And my path into it was, so I went to college late in life. I had a baby very early and then another one few years later. So I had 2 kiddos by the time I was 25. So I got my degree when I was 32. And when I was graduating, there was a girl in my cohort who was a recruiter in healthcare IT. And she taught me how to do a Boolean search on LinkedIn. Like back then, LinkedIn was just becoming... I mean, I wouldn't even say, what it is now is obviously very different. But, so I was like, I figured out I could be a recruiter in any industry. And I had a friend who actually owns like a small HVAC services firm. And he asked me if I would help him find techs, like HVAC techs. And I was like, I think I can probably do that, you know? So that's what got me the invite to crew, because I met with a guy from McKinstry as a potential candidate, and he was like, hey, I'm going to this crew event next week. You should go to it. So I went to it, and that's where I met Brett. So yeah.
Got it.
That's how that.
Yeah,
That doesn't answer what did I want to be when I grew up. Like I didn't know.
Okay. It's okay. You don't know, right?
Yeah.
You don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I people are always kind of fascinated by the acting background and like how did you end up here? But to me, it's like it makes perfect sense because when you're doing shows, when you're doing theater, it's a production. It's a project. All it is a project. All it is a project. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so my life has been this cycle of projects, productions over and over again from the time I was 9. And so when I stopped really acting a lot was when I started my career, because I kind of scratched that itch, that kind of cyclical project-based itch.
So what was the first project when you were 9?
Well, it was a production. So it was So that was so the very first show I was in, I was in Peter Pan.
Okay. Cool. I love that.
And I was one of the Lost Boys.
I could just imagine little Rob.
But then
did you get a sword?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Love
and of
it.
course had the biggest crush on the girl playing Wendy, right? I'm like 9. But we had like, I mean, it was cool. They had like Peter Pan and Wendy got to fly. They had a fly kit that they brought into the theater. So for a little kid, that was like...
I mean, that is legit right there.
That was cool. I mean, the girl playing Wendy was 9.5. She was 10. Like, she was my age. It wasn't like...
Okay. So did you get on the flying machine then?
No.
Oh,
no.
That's a bummer.
We got to catch her when she was, like, coming in, though.
Well, and, you know, if you've got a little crush, then this is amazing.
Right? Yeah. So then from there, I did a children's version of Macbeth, which is...
Well, did you even understand what you were saying?
I did.
That's good. All right.
That was really what, like, when I did that production was when I was like, Mom, I want to be an actor. I want to do this. I really, like, figuring out the language, figuring out the Shakespeare was really hard, but really fun. And I really enjoyed it at that age. I was a geek. I was a total geek.
Yeah, and knowing your career trajectory, like, it totally makes sense. It really does.
Yeah, but the cycle, it is the cycle of the production, the thing, you know. And honestly, I've told friends of mine from the industry, from the acting side or from the theater side, like stage managers are project managers all day. Like, I would hire a stage manager as a project manager in a heartbeat. Same skill set. Absolutely, same skill set.
I'm thinking about Aedifico and in what ways we'll be cyclical as well, you know?
Yeah, right.
We'll have to, you know,
right.
But it's going to look a little different, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to, these things change, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about Aedifico.
Okay.
So what made you say, hey, I want to do this? What was the kind of the impetus for that?
Yeah. So this was probably 2 years ago now that, you know, after that long of recruitment and working with clients and sort of bringing people through the career process of that transition, I was meeting with like candidate after candidate who was very interested in leaving their firm because they had hit a place where they couldn't see advancement anymore. And I was offering them very similar roles for maybe a tiny bit of extra money in a company that had the same kind of like culture. I think our industry, the nature of it, the project, like the cyclical nature of it, and then also just how much we're impacted by, you know, the way the economy is going.
How capitalism.
I think that those external forces create a very similar culture in every company in the industry. It just can't be that different. So as I'm talking with these people and staying true to who I am, I keep leading them down the path of, what if you did your own thing? And some of them were like, maybe I can. Some of them were like, I don't want my own company. You know, like the idea, like I would go consult, but I don't want to build, you know, I don't want to have to hire people and worry about
Some
all of
people aren't
that stuff.
entrepreneurial. Yeah.
And also the fear is, okay, well, I could leave with a client, like I could get a client and then I could feel good about that, but that's still only one project. And so if I'm working on the project, how am I going to do business development for myself? How all consuming these projects have to be.
Right.
Right? You're not going to NAOP if you're planning or managing the construction of a huge tower. Like it's impossible. And then to have a life, like you're not going to.
Yeah.
And it had always been floating around in the back of my head, like, what if I'm the BD and then like I BD for like 10 different people in the industry or something like that. Like that idea I've been playing with for really since I started. And I was doing a brand refresh for Inspire, and I was using Upwork to find talent to help me through the marketing process. And it just dawned on me, like, why don't we have an Upwork?
Right.
Because that's what these people need. They need to be able to go to a platform.
Yeah, you need a platform. Yeah.
And then I thought about how Upwork, for so many reasons, couldn't work for our industry. Like mostly just because when you're building buildings, like you're not hiring random talent. Like these people have to be so buttoned up, so educated, so experienced. And Upwork just isn't that. You know, I mean, it's great for what it does, but it doesn't understand like what we need. And that's kind of how it was born. That was like the impetus.
All right. How long ago was that?
So the conversations, I would say, started 2 years ago, and then it was in March of last year when it really started becoming obvious that this was the path I wanted to take, and that I was starting to put the team together.
That was March. About when I had that first conversation with you. It was in March of last year.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So where are we at here?
I know, I was just checking in on
I know, yeah. we've got a little bit of a script, but we're not sticking totally to it. So okay. So for you, when we did first talk in March, like what resonated with you at that time?
Well, I think two things. So there are kind of two pain points that I see in the industry that are really acute. One is on the owner's side. We were always really struggling to find the right talent, especially specialized talent, people with specialized, mechanical background or R&D experience or whatever it was.
Sure.
So that consumed a lot of my time in my previous role was trying to source or figure out ways to source those kinds of individuals. The flip side of that was through my career, what I really when I first started as an owner's rep, I was managing projects directly. That waned over the first 5 years, and I really was managing a team. And that team aspect and that kind of being aware of what your team wants and needs, retention was a big deal for me. So having, understanding what people wanted and were looking for. And so in our initial conversations, the light bulb kind of went off of like, hey, so another thing before I move on to that, another thing is that the generational divide that's happening in our workforce. I'm Gen X, and I'm used to being around boomers. I've worked with boomers most of my career. Boomers have overshadowed me most of my career. That's just how that's worked. And then suddenly, earlier in my career, I'm managing millennials and Gen Z. And they just have a different way of approaching work. And I think COVID really solidified that for them. The idea that we can work remotely, we can work from anywhere. Obviously, with construction, there's on-site that needs to happen. But there's a lot of the work, so many meetings, so many things that you don't have to be in person for.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity for how people do the work. And so I think that what really resonated for me is just that I can see both opportunities. I can see the opportunity from a freelancer's perspective, a talent perspective of hey, I could just do this and I don't have to be the entrepreneur. I just have this platform I can use and just stay busy and seek out the projects I want.
That's
The projects I want, not the company, but the projects that I want.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally. And I think when I think about the generational piece, like one of the types of people that I felt, well, I knew that we were building Aedifico mostly for millennials and Gen Z and then below. But I think there's this other opportunity that's really amazing for boomers who don't want to work full time any longer, but they have all of this amazing experience to impart that needs to be imparted. I mean, it has to transfer. And yet a lot of them are being chased out of their roles right now.
right.
And so giving them an opportunity to create community, which we'll talk about, but to create community, to impart the knowledge, and then to work part-time or, on a project by project basis.
It's about empowerment. And I think that's what
that's
really
right.
resonates. That's what really resonated with me as a leader, as somebody who's worked with hundreds of people in the industry. It's the empowerment, giving people the opportunity to, like, empowering people to manage their own career and their own path. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Totally it is. It's so exciting for me to hear other people say that, because I feel like it is, but of course I do. I'm a little biased,
Well, and as we've talked, honestly, I keep asking you questions and I keep coming up with things. I think that, I'm keenly aware of my own generation and my own generational bias and my own, I'm keenly aware of all of that, to the point that I'm actively kind of push against it, So there are aspects of all of this that I would not have ever pursued as a younger me. Scary to take that leap, right?
Yeah.
But I also recognize that that's not how younger generations see it. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what's exciting for me, is like, how do we build this for the future, and how do we make this something that empowers people going forward to manage their own career? I'm really excited about it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Yay! That's awesome. Okay, so our question is, you've delivered billion-dollar programs and seen every pain point across scope, systems, and procurement. So, just from the project perspective, what's the biggest friction point? And I mean, this is so good for me to know and understand, because I don't know.
Honestly, getting the right diligence done to get buy-off on the project, like the decision, the go no go for the project, is probably the hardest. When I looked at this question, that was my first thought, was, God, it's just getting permission to start is often the hardest. But when you really drill down to it, it really is about the diligence. It's about the questions that decision makers will ask. So often people aren't prepared to answer those questions right away. And so there's a lot of backwards work that you end up having to do the financial justification, the ROI, all the business planning that you should have done to begin with. So I think that is, that was the first thought that came to mind. But I think that the other thing is resources. And it's resources and market, depending on where you are. Some places that just don't have good commercial electrical presence, or whatever it is.
Interesting.
Or the right expertise. I think a lot about specialty projects, because that's a lot of what my team did, is a lot of specialty work. And so often, you'd have these one-off, you need to build a cryogenic chamber or whatever it was, Like, who's the expert on cryogenic chambers? I don't know.
Yeah, there's got to be one, though. There's got to be one.
Right. And there is, and there are people who do all kinds of these things.
Totally.
Slight digression, because this isn't directly related to my career, but it is somebody I met, and it really resonated with me about how specialized you can be. So I went to the University of Washington Foster School of Business Executive Development.
Yeah, okay.
Executive Development Program, which is like
cool.
A certificate program. And one of the gentlemen in my cohort at the time was the chief operating officer for the Port of Seattle. And I'm like, how do you get that job? Because he really was a construction manager.
Yeah.
He got his start in, I think, the Air Force or the Army, in one of the armed services, building runways in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like building runways, literally like building runways.
Wow.
Was how he got his start.
Wow.
And what a weird niche, you know. And here he is running an airport, you know.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah. He's not there anymore, which is why the construction at the airport is kind of a mess now.
Okay, and then just for those who might be tuning in who aren't from our industry, just fill us in on what go no go is.
So go no go to me is that point at which you are approved to move forward with a project, to spend money. Then there are different gateways within that. You know,
Yes.
you could do pre-construction, so you might do,
Yeah.
a proof of concept. You might have a little bit of architecture time, a little bit of due diligence if it's a site plan or something like that. You know, if there's environmental considerations or whatever, that you have to get through to prove the ROI. But the go no go is when leadership agrees to invest the capital in whatever the project is.
Yeah, got it.
Spend
Yes.
approval. Spend approval is what it is.
It's one of those things, you know, that we can very easily breeze over in the
Right.
industry and like assume that that makes sense to everyone. So I'm trying my best in case we have some people in tech who eventually tune in, or, you know, that we're making sure
makes
we,
sense.
we fill them in. So yeah,
So just kind of moving along through our questions.
sure.
So you've been really clear about Aedifico not being a board or staffing agency. What is it? Can you distill it down to like what is Aedifico and what makes it different?
Yeah. So yes, Aedifico is a project execution network. So what that means is if you are responsible for a project in any capacity in CRE, AEC, then the platform is a place that you can go and enter in your scope of work, not your job description, but your scope of work. And then it will immediately connect you with individuals who are certified and educated in that scope of work that you need. And then it allows you to have a conversation with that individual, negotiate with them, and then pay them once you come to an agreement and the work is being completed, right? So it's a full platform, like it's a platform that can allow you as a developer, or you don't have to be a developer. I mean, you could essentially be anyone in AEC who needs expertise, and so it will connect you immediately with the subject matter or technical.
Right? If you're a one-off and you have one project, you could use this to build a team.
That's right. Yeah. So that's what makes it different. It's not a job platform. Essentially, if you wanted to find someone full time on it, I'm not gonna stop you. You know.
Right.
You know, I think there are a lot of like sort of use cases that exist for it. And for most of those, we're saying go for it. You know, I mean, the platform can be used in many ways, but yeah, it is very different from being a job board or even a LinkedIn. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, you know, what kinds of professionals you envision using Aedifico.
Yeah. So it really can be anyone who has experience in the industry and is educated in that way. So you can be a construction project manager. You can be project engineer, which there are two versions of that. There is the project engineer who works for a general contractor who is basically a project coordinator or a project manager who's early in their career. They're absolutely Yeah, they're absolutely welcome. But also, or engineers, actual certified, you know, licensed engineers of all kinds, right? I mean, you've got your structural, your HVAC, your ground, any type of civil. Mm-hmm. You can tell I don't live in engineering world, but those acoustic. Individuals. What's that?
Acoustic.
That's right. Acoustic, definitely. So all of them, and then on the architecture side, design managers, project managers, licensed architects, interior designers, anyone from the beginning of the development process, like even geotech and, you know, all of that, to the end where you're commissioning, you know, any individual who prefers not to work for a company but has that skill set is welcome on the platform. There's others like people like myself who would say like I'm a business development executive, or asset managers.
Mm-hmm.
Those individuals are also welcome. I think it will be interesting to see how, like I envision it being a situation where, say, you're one of these people, you're a construction project manager in Ohio, and a company from New York has a project there, and they kind of want to like leverage that project to create more business in that market, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to find the individuals that have the relationships in that market. Right. So
Right.
it's going to be about, when it comes to BD, it's about relationships. And so I can envision a situation where, it's a scope of work that is introduce us to your network for a period of time, create that opportunity for us, and we'll pay you for, say, a year to do that. And then once we have a foothold, we really don't need those relationships anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of, and it's good for the business development executive because their relationships aren't necessarily, they don't want to keep having, like, once you're sort of saturated in a market, you're saturated, but you still want that to be of value to other companies.
Right.
So it's like, and I think about like people who have relationships with brokers, for example, like who in the industry needs to know brokers? Title, like TIGCs, meaning, like general contractors who do tenant improvements.
Yep.
That's two right off the bat, that if an individual has relationships with brokers, I don't know why they can't get paid by title and by the GC.
Right.
So to me, as we move into this world where things become more focused on projects and individuals have so many tools available to them that they don't need the company anymore, it's like this is the world we're moving into that Aedifico can help facilitate.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. As I'm writing for this week, I'm this kind of dovetails nicely with some of what I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
And the way I've framed it for myself is it's really for anybody who's project specific that wouldn't be used by the company in executing their normal business. Meaning, like, you always have finance, you have your bank, your finance people and your legal people for whatever. Those people are involved in real estate deals too. But they're involved the way they are in all kinds of deals. It's not specific to the project. It's for the project-specific talent. It's to execute that scope of work, and that's how I framed it: is whoever's within that bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Not anybody who touches it, but whoever's only in that bubble.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think what's cool about where we're at is that there's going to be what it is, what we want it to be, and what others think it is. And all of those are going to kind of collide, and we're going to gather a lot of data over the next year that kind of tells us, okay, this is how people are using it. This is what they love. This is what, isn't working. So at the beginning, it's fun to just imagine and
right.
Talk about it. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you mentioned like legal.
Yeah.
Or, so when I think about the freelancers and then the companies, like what is legal for the freelancer and what is legal for companies, like to do and not do is, I'll say as a disclaimer, it's on you to know what the laws are in your state to know whether or not. Yeah.
Totally. I was thinking about legal in terms of the legal team.
Yes, and I knew that, but the word
cool.
just
I want to make sure that we were on the same page. Yeah. But good clarification though. I think that's 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's important, and it's something I think we had for later on, but just something to mention that I think Texas is doing it really well on behalf of freelancers. They're making things very flexible, so you can take freelance work pretty much anywhere, whereas California is making it pretty challenging. As a freelancer, you can't be hired by a company that is an expert at your scope of work. So what that means is if the company exists to provide project management services, they can't hire a project manager as a freelancer. They have to hire, they can hire marketing, they can hire, BD, if it's not the actual nature of their work. But, so there are some things that we as a company will be advocating for in order to make things easier for people to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is the direction, though, that work is going, just generally. I think that's just the future of work for people.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, I'm excited to dig into this with you. Through your experience, you've created a lot of programs, right? Like that's really your like little nut that you've cracked, So, like, what are you excited about in creating programs in this way, in what we're doing?
I think it's a combination of things. Creating programs is a comfort zone for me. It's something I'm good at, and I know I'm good at. This is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
This does challenge me a little bit in some ways in terms of thinking outside of the traditional employment model and all of those other things.
Right.
But what really excites me about it is that sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah.
That's all right.
That's all right.
It will delete this, which is so
what's
awesome.
What's the question again? Get me back on track.
Well, I think maybe I could maybe let's start by saying, describe a program that you've created in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so many. So we had to create a program for return to office multiple times.
Uh-huh.
Right, in the early days of COVID, it was like, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks, so we'll be back in 4 weeks, we'll be back in 3 months, we might never come back. And so we had to develop a program and kind of rapidly iterate that program over and over again, to the point that it really became towards the later stages, pretty easy to kind of just roll out, because it was, at least we had all of the logistical information we needed all gathered already, and then we could just, whatever it was we needed to do, we could just implement. All the contacts were there, and all the done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
which is cool. I mean, and that's what we have to do, right?
I think what excites me about this is that it's introducing something new to the industry. I like it because we don't know really what it's going to look like in 6 months, a year. And so like that inherent kind of flexibility. I like not knowing where I'm going to be in 6 months, because I like to make those changes along the way anyway.
Yeah, right.
I get bored very easily, so this is challenging, and I like the challenge of it. I like that I don't know what it's going to look like yet, and that we're going to have to kind of. I mean, so much of my career, especially when I was an owner's rep, was building the plane while flying it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like that free falling feeling, and as you're building the plane.
We're doing that.
Yeah,
we're doing that, definitely.
Right. So I think that's what excites me about it is that idea that it's going to be ever evolving. I don't think it's going to be in stasis. I don't think we're going to get to a stasis.
Yeah,
we might get to stability, but not stasis.
Yeah, in my head, it's kind of like there are many questions about enterprise program that have to be answered, and we don't know exactly what they are yet. And when we know what they are and then we can answer them, it's going to be fairly easy to anticipate that for the next one. And so creating this I mentioned flywheel. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with that, that term, right? And so that's what I'm excited about from especially from the enterprise place, because they're going to be the ones with they're going to be the ones that it's going to be easy, or maybe not easy, but simple to create that program around, and then package it up and make sure that it works for all the rest.
Right.
And so like I'm excited to go through that process with our first few companies.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna also be obviously working with a lot of developers, and I think those are gonna be kind of a little bit less specific and a little more one-off, but and it'll be easy for them to come to the platform and just use the platform. We don't have to necessarily have a program for them, although maybe we will eventually. Who knows? We'll see.
Right.
But yeah, ultimately,
I don't know. I mean, this is I'm going to watch your face when I say this, but ultimately, the way this should work is I should work myself out of a job for enterprise, right? Ultimately, we shouldn't have to build anything for enterprise because it should all be there. But I just don't think we just need to know what those things are, and that's to your point from the very beginning of that is that until we have some iterations under our belt, we don't know what their challenges with it are going to be or what their specific needs are going to be.
Right.
Right. That we haven't anticipated. I think we've done a really good job of that, and I think it's, as it stands, I think it's going to be, I was a big fan of the 80% solution, right? It's probably more than the 80% solution, but we're, the tweaking needs to happen now, right? The input needs to happen. That's what we need. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's going to be good. What else do we have? Okay.
you've been good at working some of these in, even though I didn't ask.
Well, yeah, I know because we've kind of jumped all around, which is perfectly
That's
fine.
that's how I usually do interviews anyway.
So
I like the what does the future of work look like, and why isn't it showing up on LinkedIn?
yeah, what do
I'm
you
not
think?
sure what is showing up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I say that as somebody who was unemployed for a while and was on the platform daily. There's a lot of information and a lot of interesting content.
What is interesting? Like, what are some examples for you that are that's interesting on there?
Well, interesting for me would be people writing about things that interest me, that are about leadership or about generational shifts or market changes. I think some of that content that's out there, it's the only place I see some of that content,
Yeah.
and so that I find helpful. For me as a job seeker, was a terrible experience. There were jobs that I applied for in March or April of last year that I think are still listed as open. Those people aren't hiring it for anybody. They're not hiring that. They clearly don't need the role,
Yeah. Yep.
So to me, it's why isn't it showing up on LinkedIn? I think LinkedIn doesn't know what it wants to be. Is LinkedIn just Facebook for business people?
I'm certain that it knows it's dying.
Right.
Yes, it is fake. Like it is to me. That's what I see when I look at it. It is people posting about being at a conference, people posting their group shot of their golf tournament.
Right. It's a constant, and this is an outgrowth of the internet generation, but really it's a never-ending quest for relevance.
That's
And I
spot on.
I think I wrote that in one of my posts, knowing full well that that's what I was doing too, right? I'm posting so I can get likes, or somebody can see it, comment on it, whatever. We're all doing it, but what's relevant changes every 5 minutes. So it's just this, I don't know.
I agree, and I think it's our human need to be seen.
Right.
Just I want to be seen, and when it happens in the digital form, it doesn't it feels good, but it's not the same. A like is not the same as having coffee with a friend.
No, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think going back to it's Facebook for business people. If I think about how I use it, that is how I use it. I use Facebook to, it's the only place I stay up with the people I grew up with. That's how I stay current with what's going on in their lives. Well, LinkedIn is really the only place I stay up with the people I used to work with.
Right.
And there is that kind of comfort of that, but it's not. So why is the future not showing up? I think LinkedIn doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't want the future of work to show up on it.
Yeah.
It's not about work anymore.
Yeah. I think
it's about the memory of work, or yeah.
But I do think it's also it is very much about being seen, and I would go so far as to say loved, right? That is what we hope.
Right. Everybody wants that,
but
adulation.
I don't think the algorithms really, to me, they do a better job of showing you what they think you don't want to see than what you do in some ways. Here are all the things you didn't get to be a part of.
Right.
Or that you missed out on, or whatever, and so I just don't, I'm not even on Facebook. I've been off of Facebook for probably 5 years.
Smart.
It didn't make me feel good. And I'm on Instagram, like literally to follow designers so I can see what purse I want. Like, I don't follow anyone I know, and most people that I know don't think I'm even on Instagram.
I pretty much only did Instagram because I started making little videos when I was traveling in Europe last year.
Oh, yeah.
So every few days I would do a little, like a photo collage with music, and yeah.
And that's so fun.
It's fun to have that as a memory.
Totally.
And I'm a photographer, so you'd think that I would love Instagram, but I don't really actually love Instagram.
I'm telling you, I'm just like Dior, Chanel, like what are the trends up and coming? I don't need somebody to tell me what the trends are. I just want to look at the pictures.
I get sports cars,
yeah,
wingsuits, people jumping in wingsuits, because I've always loved watching those things.
Yeah.
The sports cars, wingsuits, babies, and puppies, like dogs.
Yeah.
Those are really the things I get on Instagram.
I'm surprised babies. Did you like something and now it's just
I love babies.
eating?
I love watching like baby talk, baby baby shit.
Yes, babies are pretty great.
And babies on the internet are like, I mean, come on.
It's next level. Yeah. They're doing so. Oh my gosh.
Toddlers, like, that little girl who sees the bear coming up. Have you seen this video? Like, the bear comes up and she's like, I want to pet that dog.
No, I haven't seen that one.
She's a little girl from the South. She's like, I want to pet that dog. Can I pet that dog?
Oh my goodness, babies are the best.
Anyway, yeah. So I mean, a long answer for that, but I think that's why it's not showing up on LinkedIn. I just think LinkedIn has lost its relevancy. I think it's its time has passed. Yeah,
but I think about like for us, like we're about to birth a baby, Tuesday of next week at the latest. Mm-hmm. And then I think about like what is Aedifico when it's 5, and not these don't necessarily have to correlate with years, but like what is it when it's a 5-year-old? What is it when it's a toddler? What is what is it when it's a teenager? And so I it's very important to me that Aedifico creates community. I do not know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know that I absolutely want people to be able to connect there and not necessarily have to do a transaction between a scope of work and a project. I would love for people to be able to find mentors there and people to mentor and community where you can show up for a virtual happy hour amongst other consultants who are doing the same skill as you.
In a way, it becomes its own industry group.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's absolutely important through the lens of allowing people to be seen.
Right.
Necessarily, like, algorithms are good for what they're good for, and I mean, we use algorithms. Like, there's no doubt we use algorithms, we are using AI, that's important. But I do think that you can be intentional about the way you design those that inspires community and not, hey, you're left out of this thing. And I also love the idea of people being able to share what they're working on, not in a picture form at the golf course, but actually like, here's the building I just built.
Right.
And being much more intentional about what that interface looks like and things like that. So those are kind of my big, and then of course uploading the scopes. I love the
idea of having like a job photos section or something, like where you post your job photo of the day or, just whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. So yeah, it's really exciting to think about all of the ways that we can help the industry. It's what makes me love tech.
Right.
I feel excited to be a tech company because it really is, you just have so much more opportunity that way.
It's been interesting living, I'm glad you mentioned that, living in Seattle and being surrounded by tech companies and working in the commercial real estate industry, which really hasn't, we use email. Architects use Revit or, they're using computer tools, they're not drafting by hand anymore. There's certain things, we're doing 3D modeling, there's certain things that are really cool, But really, like, I feel like the industry is lagging way behind technologically. I just think we're not making use of the tools that we have, and that's one of the reasons I'm excited about Aedifico. It's a platform that allows people to. It's a tool that people can use, and and I love the community aspect. I think that I love to hear that. I think that's fantastic.
Why do you think we don't use the tools that are available to us?
I think, I mean, this is really just me thinking out loud, but I think that we're so steeped in this means and methods kind of world, where in construction especially, there are means and methods that you follow that are the right means and methods to do things. And I'm not questioning that, right? There are certain things that are the means and methods, but I think that we get, that leads to a place of complacency, maybe is the wrong word, a place where you lean into things not changing. Things don't change because this doesn't change. Every morning at the job site they do their stretches and they have their safety briefing. Right?
Yeah, right.
I find that the more routine you make something like that, yes, you're checking that box, and the legal guys love that, but nobody's paying attention. I feel like the industry just has been controlled by the same kind of mindset for forever. I think it's just changing. Just even in my own career, when I first started out, you really didn't see a lot of women in the trades, at least certainly not in the numbers you do now. You certainly, I mean, there were some women in the trades, but there a lot more women in the trades, a lot more women project managers than there were.
Yes, yes.
And I think that, I mean, construction is really like, I mean, there's a lot of old white guy kind of networks out there, but construction really is like, has been that impenetrable one forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's changing. I just think that's changing, and because of that more equitable way of looking at things, I think it's an opportunity for the industry to change and grow up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'll give that 10 amens, that's for sure. Totally. So I'm curious, like, when a company like Amazon is looking for this, like, niche experience, like, what are the ramifications when they can't find them? For what was the example you used earlier? What was that?
Cryotherapy or
cryotherapy.
I don't know. I mean, that wasn't an actual example. That was like, I was just pulling that out of my butt.
Right, right.
But you'd be working on things that, where you're working with acoustics, or, you're creating an anechoic chamber, for example. The impacts are delays. I mean, really, it's about delays until you can find the right person. Because you have two choices. You either find the right person who can help you, or you do it wrong. And iterate until you do it right.
Yeah, I suppose.
And both are expensive.
That's right.
Both are expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Delays.
Delays are probably less expensive, unless you get lucky.
Then
with the
getting
iteration.
it wrong, you mean, and having to start over?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Tell us about your favorite interview question.
Oh, you want to hear my favorite interview question?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, you gotta set it up, and then
I will. I'll just ask it like I'm asking you. I know you've already answered it before, but so the element of surprise isn't there. But I've asked this question literally hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. I've asked it of virtually everybody I've interviewed for 10 years. And when I say virtually, if I interviewed you and I didn't ask you this question, I didn't hire you, probably. So.
So it wasn't even worth asking.
Yeah. If I didn't get to the question, you probably knew you weren't doing very well. So there's no right or wrong answer. You can ask clarifying questions along the way.
But you didn't tell me that in the first.
I know I didn't. I know.
Do you tell people that?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I'm just out of practice.
So you're kind of prepping them, and so then the gauge is.
Did they listen?
Well, yeah. So if you're prepping them with that, then the gauge has to be like, okay, well, what clarifying questions did they ask? Okay, go on.
Yeah. So I'll explain why I asked the question when we're done. Are you ready?
Huh?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm asking you the question.
I'm ready.
Okay. You're driving a car, it's on fire and full of clowns. Which one do you save?
How big is the car?
I mean, it's a clown car, so it's like a mini, but it's got like 28 of them in it.
And it's got 20.
I mean, however many clowns they could jam into a mini.
So am I allowed to use some sort of AI to determine the value of each of the 28 clowns to see which one?
Only if you do it fast, because it's a fast-moving fire.
Okay, so about how long do I have, do you think?
30 seconds.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. And they're clowns. They're considered clowns for a reason.
Yeah.
They're clowns. So my response, I'm going to stick to it in this second time, is just let them all burn.
Okay. Okay. Good. So, really, there's no right or wrong answer. There is a wrong answer. The only wrong answer I've gotten is not being able to answer. Really, I asked the question, and there's a word for this, and I'm going to get it wrong, so I won't say it. But there's a word for it. It's a question that really gauge cultural fit more than anything. So I prep people with, you can ask clarifying questions, because I'm intentionally vague when I ask the question. I say, the car is on fire and full of clowns. Which one do you save? Some people, and I think they tend to be more like of an engineering mindset. They think more literally. They immediately ask the car or the clowns.
Yes, that is, yeah, that's
Right?
what comes to me
And
first.
so that's kind of the first gate. If somebody doesn't pick that up, I'm okay with that, because they might be focused on the clowns, because clowns are weird. How quickly somebody is able to answer is actually important to me. So if somebody can just immediately answer, like none of them or the car, fine. I'm not even going to press too much. Can you think on your feet? Are you okay with ambiguous information? Are you willing to ask questions?
Okay.
Do you ask good questions? There's so much you can learn from it.
Absolutely. I really like it. I think, especially for the nature of the work you were in, and
the
for
hard
the
part of it
client.
is, I've always kind of struggled with, like, someday I'll write a book and this will be in it, and then people are going to start using this. The thing about it is the question's only as good as the person who's interpreting the information. It's my question. I'm interpreting the information through the lens of what I needed.
That's right.
And so, I would caution anybody before using that question to know what you were trying to get out of it. Oh, they answered clowns, they're a hire. Like, it's.
Totally. Yeah. It's a good question, though. I like it.
Yeah.
One of the things I would really like to share is this book I'm reading called The Cold Start Problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written by Andrew Chen, who worked for a long time at Uber, and then I believe is now in venture capital with Aedifico. And the cold start problem is really a problem that is kind of unique to networks. And when you're creating a digital network like Uber, right? Mm-hmm. It's a two-sided or sometimes three or four-sided platform. So referring to the fact that if you don't have, so for us, if you don't have technical experts, then the scopes aren't, and the clients aren't matched, and then if you don't have the scopes and clients, then, they obviously aren't going to get the value on the other side.
Using Uber as an example, if you have only drivers but no riders, it's worthless.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so he sort of takes you through, of course, they're engineers as well as finance people. And so he kind of takes you through, here are all of the problems that you face, and then here's how you overcome them. And so it's really helped influence the way that we are launching. First of all, Aedifico is an invitation-only platform, and this is for us to make sure that we're honoring that who we say on the platform is actually on the platform, and who isn't. It's very obvious who isn't, right? And these are people who don't have the right experience to design and build. And so I think that it's a question that I really want to answer related to, why is it invite only? And so that really is the reason. And I think it just helps keep us honest and helps bring trust to the platform itself when the individuals are who they say they are and can do what they say they can do.
Well, and it allows us to scale the system intentionally.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's lots of little lessons in this book that I've sort of taken away. One thing that is,
I have not read it. I'm curious now.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend it. For really the whole Aedifico team would be great. I think it's just really helpful to understand. And some of it is a little further, I'm towards the end of the book now where it's okay, this is something that I'm just going to maybe put a bookmark in and then I'll revisit in a year because, it's just not where we're at.
Right.
But just the other thing that is interesting or maybe a little different that we're doing is a lot of companies start with kind of small. Rob Jones, due to a change in their devices. Oh, did you change?
No.
That's weird. Okay, no problem. It's telling me that.
New recording track created, it says.
Yeah, I don't. So we'll have to see. Maybe I'll just see about combining them at the end. But, a lot of companies start with kind of smaller firms as their clients, which we are doing that too. We're not doing that. Carrie, our VP of subcontractor outreach, is definitely like working on that. And some of these companies are not small, but they're not enterprise. A lot of companies don't start with enterprise. But I felt that it was important for us to pursue that because, well, first of all, we live in Seattle and there's really no excuse not to. And secondly, let me make sure I say this right. Because of the legal ramifications of some AEC companies hiring project-based workers when that's the nature of their business, I didn't want to be rejected too much. And so with enterprise, their reason for being, these big companies' reasons for being, a lot of them are tech or biotech or, just it's something different than real estate. It's something different than construction. And so they can really hire anyone on the platform.
Right.
And so for that reason, I wanted to make sure that we kind of started with the end in mind, if you will, and make sure that we're doing that consecutively with some of the others. And the book doesn't necessarily, it doesn't dissuade you from doing that. It's just that most companies don't do their beta with enterprise, and our hope is to definitely have enterprise clients in our beta. So I wanted to just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Now I want to read that book.
Yeah, for sure. It is. I've enjoyed it. I love audio. I do audio, and then I play like solitaire or something that's mindless.
I probably should. That would. I should try that. I haven't actually ever done audiobooks.
Yeah, I almost always do, because then at night I'm kind of zoning out, like I said, and then I can like do something else while I'm listening that kind of keeps, I don't know, maybe it's the phone thing and our addiction to it, but I've found it to be, and you can listen in the car if you're commuting, like there, like I'm constantly taking in podcasts or, new books. I've got several other, let me look at them and I can tell you what I'm reading right now. Yeah, so the cold start problem, the courage to be disliked, which I don't really love. Secrets of Sand Hill Road, which has been great. That one is all about, you're familiar with Sand Hill Road. Yeah. So that one has been really helpful as I'm thinking through, our investors and who they should be. I have a pretty specific thought on that I could share sometime. So I'm using Audible as an app now, but I also just have the Apple Books app. What do I have there? Algorithms to Live By has been pretty interesting. And then I'm reading a book about it's called The Great Bridge, which is about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. And all of the stories of the individuals who advocated for it, and the engineers, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm kind of obsessed with New York and Brooklyn, and I just love the history there, right? Like we just don't have that on the West Coast.
I love New York. New York was really the first city that I visited.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went from Idaho at 16, biggest city I'd ever been to was Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And flew to New York for a school trip. 16 years old, loosely chaperoned.
Yeah, okay.
In 1985.
Oh my gosh. What is wrong with these people?
I saw a mugging.
That's scary.
In broad daylight. I saw a mugging.
Well, sure. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
I mean, this is the 80s, right? It was like before they cleaned up the city. I mean, Times Square that was back when it was still like prostitution was happening in Times Square. And
yeah.
But yeah, we were all over that city all night. I saw Joy Division. Perform at this like all ages club.
What is Joy Division? I don't even know what that is.
Joy Division was like a early kind of goth band. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of like The Cure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like not
Predecessor
only
to
is that
Twitter.
not like I'm an ancient millennial. So
You're quite a bit younger than me.
I don't know about quite a bit, but yeah. I don't know who they are, but it's also just because that's never been my genre. Like The Cure, like my
Yeah.
husband
Well,
likes
we just ended up at this place.
that.
Like,
Okay.
I was 16. Yeah.
You're like, I don't know, I'm 16. I'm just showing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. So
Totally.
anyway, I mean, long story short to say, I love New York, and the thing I get the same sense of wonder having lived in Seattle for so long now. Like cities don't give me the same sense of wonder, but I still, whenever I go to New York, still get that same like feeling that I had that first time going to a big city, and I just love it. And also, the city doesn't change all that much. You know, it's
Yeah, it
same
really
subway
does.
stops and the familiar bars and restaurants, and it's great.
Why this is an interesting question, I think, that I asked my husband. Well, I was just asking him, like, why do you think I love the city so much? Like,
Yeah.
I love the city and what the city means. And it's not even necessarily a city. It's like the city,
The
right? Like
city.
just Tacoma, Seattle. Like when I drive into Seattle, I feel like despite its flaws, I feel love for it. Like I do for a human. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
like, oh, I
Hmm.
love you. I love the buildings. I love the energy. I think it really does come down to like a human factor. Like, and New York is so overwhelmingly human. You can look, you can see someone get mugged, and walking right behind them is a perfectly dressed, beautiful woman, like
Hmm.
designer, probably dripping with, thousands of dollars, right? And then someone who's sad and someone who's joyful, and like it's just all there all at once, and I think it's lovely.
We went to see Hamilton on Broadway,
Mm.
and then the next day went to visit Hamilton and his wife's grave, which is in which is down by Wall Street.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
How did that feel?
really cool, really cool, really cool. One of my first experiences in New York, I remember, again being 16 and like the smell of the diesel and just the smell of the city. Um, but the that just like buzzing, that just there's always energy, there's
Hmm.
always something happening, there's
Yeah,
always something going on, and
totally.
just yeah, just like, and the history,
Sirens.
the sense of history there, that like,
Totally.
the other thing, and this is like part of that, New York is so iconic because in movies for our whole lives you see street scenes in New York. And so everywhere you go in New York, you see the Flatiron Building, and you see this, and you see that, and it's 30 Rock, like,
Right.
oh, it's right there. It's just it's I love it, and the history of it, I just love it.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
Boston is the
obsessed. I'm
same way. I love
obsessed.
Boston for the same reason.
Yeah, Boston is
Well, similar
great.
reasons. I mean, I love the history of Boston more, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and don't get me started about Europe.
Yeah, that I haven't been there yet. Yeah, I can't speak to it, but yeah, I'll go eventually. I mean,
Yeah,
there's the goal to get there. So we thought about it this year, but I think it's just, when you're trying to bootstrap a startup, it's not
yeah,
it's not in
yeah.
the cards.
I'm glad my wife insisted that I go
Hmm.
last year.
Yeah.
That was 9 countries in 3 weeks. Way to go.
That's yeah. Well, you have to tell us about that too
I will.
sometime. Well, I think we have come to time. Anything else you want the audience to know?
No, no. There's so many little. I was thinking about this, like if you were going to ask me any weird like factoid about me or anything like that, and I was thinking, God, my answer to that is like there are so many weird factoids about me that
Mm.
like
Well,
you don't
give us
even know.
one. Come on, we gotta have one.
Oh, God. Well, I think I told you this one.
Okay,
It's
but you
about,
didn't tell us. You didn't tell the audience.
all right, all right. So hang on. See if I've got a picture or just this. I think I just have this. But these guys
Okay.
are the original Siamese twins, Chang and Eng Bunker, and Chang Bunker is my great 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 grandfather on my dad's side. Yeah.
That's so crazy.
So I'm descended from the original Siamese twins. Their story was fascinating. They were world famous. They were like the Cher or the Bono of their day, the Celine
Mm-hmm.
Dion or what, Taylor Swift of their day. They're like first non-Caucasian U.S. citizens.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Married sisters, had 21 children between them. Yeah, yeah. Settled in Mount Airy, North Carolina. So they have a family reunion every July. I've been 3 times.
Huh?
It's pretty fun.
That's amazing.
It's a
Do you
cool
think
thing.
like it came down in your genetics that that was also why you were wanted to be an actor
No,
somehow?
no, I don't think so. I don't think that was genetic. I think that was just my own weird,
Yeah.
my extroversion at the time.
Right.
You know, I
Yeah.
was a precocious kid who was an extrovert and was good at memorizing things. So
That's pretty cool. That is definitely a unique kind of fact about you. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Yeah.
I can kind of see it.
yeah, yeah, it's really interesting actually. In the museum in North Carolina, there's a picture of one of their grandsons.
Huh?
And he looks very Asian. He looks very Thai still. And his name was Wu. And he's sitting there in a very specific, like in an animated conversation with family members in this family photo. And he looks just like my uncle.
Wow.
Not his
That's
face,
crazy.
but his body, the way he sits. I love that kind of
Genetics are a weird. They're
Right?
weird. They're
It's weird.
weird.
It's weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like my niece and my daughter, and my niece grew up in Walla Walla. They're similar in age. They're only year apart, 1 year apart. But their mannerisms, the way they move their bodies, like everything whenever we're with my niece, I can't help but like stare in weird ways because I'm like, you are so much like Bella, like the McGill.
Yeah.
It's my husband's brother's daughter, so like the McGill side is like very strong.
Really
there.
strong.
It's
Yeah.
it's
I love that kind of stuff.
I do too. It's so fun, especially when y'all like each other. It's when you get the ugly stuff, that it's
Right.
a little
right.
hard.
I mean, the
but-
fun thing about the family reunion in North Carolina is I see these people once a year, and they're, we're family, but we're like eighth cousins or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, you're not all up in each other's business making life.
I mean, a lot of them are. A lot of them do live
really?
there, and yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's why I like it because I am that outsider, and everybody likes to talk to me because I'm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So you just hear all the gossip. You're just the listener. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's a cool fact. I like
Yeah.
that.
Well, every time I do one of these, I'll spring a new factoid on you.
Perfect.
Yeah. You know the little game, the two truths and a lie.
Mm-hmm.
I used to tell 3 truths.
So you
Because
broke the
everybody would
rules.
assume one of them. I mean, the Siamese twin one sounds like a lie.
Yeah, it does. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, good then. We'll find
All
out
right.
all those little tidbits.
We're off. So
All
I've,
right.
I've done my first podcast. Here we go.
You are. Congratulations. You
you.
made it through the first of many.
All right.
It's going to be awesome.
All right.
All right. Thanks, audience. Thanks so much for being
Thanks,
with
everybody.
us. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.